I think we are live. There we go. All right, we should be all set up and running. Hi everyone, happy Wednesday. Thanks for making it live if you are here live. And as always, thank you for catching the replay if that's how you're watching. I know a lot of you are busy therapists, and a lot of you are new to the group, so maybe you don't know that this is the generally the standard time that I hold these free trainings is Wednesdays at 1:30 p.m. Pacific time. So if you are new to the group, I know we had a lot of people join this group, so welcome. It's exciting for just people to learn more about therapy intensives and really how they can not only change your practice and your life, but also your future clients or even your current clients' life. So, introduce myself a little bit. My name is Amanda Baduris. I am a licensed psychologist in Oregon. I have a solo private practice that I transitioned to after many years in university college counseling center work. And I'm just really excited to be at a place in my business where I've got a lot more time than I ever had, a lot more money than I ever had, a lot more confidence than I ever had. And really one of the ways that I've done that is with therapy intensives. So I'm going to talk a little bit today for those of you who are like, I've kind of heard of them, but what exactly are they? What are therapy intensives? And then the topic for today is, how do I even know what to focus on for an intensive? Because sometimes even a 45 or 60-minute appointment, you might be covering lots of different topics with a client. So it makes sense that then there's questions of, well, now if I've got a lot of time with my client, what are we focusing on? So I'll give you some ideas for what that can look like, how you kind of treatment plan according to what the focus is. But would love it for those of you who are here live, especially if you are new to the group, feel free to go into the chat, let me know who you are, where you're signing in from, and any questions that you have outside of, related to this topic. So if there are any questions, I will answer them as I see them. And then as always, if you are catching the replay, feel free to also comment and I will leave answers to those when I get a chance to watch them. So why consider therapy intensives? So again, really all this is, you all have probably seen a version of what this could look like because you kind of know what it is. There's a reason you are interested in learning more about them and how to add them to your services. But really it's anywhere between a 90-minute session, and I've seen people do 4 to 8 hours of therapy in one day. So it can be that long, it can be that short, it could be for one day, it could be for multiple days. A lot of it, again, is going to depend on what's your focus. And also maybe it depends on what trainings you practice or kind of like modalities, what therapy approaches do you incorporate. So again, the benefits of a therapy intensive is not just, there's deeper connection. You really do form a really good relationship, especially if it's a new client, right? There's a difference between I'm working with this client already in a weekly model, we're transitioning over into an intensive model, or just adding on a therapy intensive to their care. And, I'm finding someone totally new, someone who I've never worked with before. When you spend multiple hours with someone and you do a lot of really good work in processing with someone, you form a really deep connection. So that's really cool. There's a lot more rapid progress that can happen the more that you just open up time for talking through things, working through things, processing through things. People are making, they're making a lot more progress on their therapy goals. Because one thing that I say a lot is, when you've probably seen mentions of what a therapy intensive is, you've probably seen like EMDR intensives or IFS or brain spotting intensives, or even like Gottman marathon sessions. You've seen all these different ways that maybe some people are practicing in an intensive way, but really you could have a talk therapy session for multiple hours. The whole point of an intensive is just, let's get a lot of therapy done in a little bit of time. So rapid progress is pretty much guaranteed no matter how you practice, what modalities you're using, how you're conceptualizing, and things like that. Therapy intensives also give you a lot of financial and schedule flexibility, which is great. I know that there are a lot of people who are struggling with student loans are coming due, tax time is coming up and around the corner, the economy just kind of keeps bumping up and down and around. I know I see so many people looking for, well, what are those alternative streams of income, right? That's one way in my practice that I'm using intensives, because I still see people on a weekly model, but I also do, so I prioritize like intensive packages. So if someone is doing a 2-day package once a month, that's an extra like two, three, sometimes $4,000 I'm making in a month. So I don't have to get another client, because at my $275 fee, I'm not going to even make that much in a month for a weekly client. So for me, that is my way of like, here's my alternative income. So it also helps you with your schedule for those of you who are parents, or maybe you have a partner who has an unpredictable work schedule and you're trying to work through just like, how do we do all the other life things outside of work? Scheduling intensives is a great way to just make that flexibility for it, because again, you're charging a premium fee for it. You can have a good sense of what your schedule is going to look like, even if there's just days that you block off for doing intensive work. So it can really help you with knowing a little bit about what to expect and how you can move things around. And maybe you can actually have time for hobbies now. I actually have time to like go to my Pilates studio during the week, when normally I would have never had that time in a weekly model. It also gives you as a therapist a lot of not just professional growth, because people are going to see you more as an expert, but it's also going to give you a lot of personal growth, like the things that are possible when you feel more confident in your professional role, but also you start to really value yourself, and not just in a monetary fashion, but you see like what your presence does for people. There's a lot of really cool things that can happen. So some examples of some successes I've had with adding therapy intensives to my practice is that there's been multiple months where I've made over 9K just from intensives. So my weekly caseload is like 10, 12, maybe 15 clients if I'm doing like a monthly maintenance session. So I don't see a lot of people, because again, I make a lot of good money from intensives. I also do a lot of really good work in intensives. There are multiple clients I've worked with in just a 3-hour intensive who have said, I feel like a completely different person, right? I never would have had this if I did not have this experience. So again, let me know if there are any questions, any thoughts that you have as I'm just starting to share a little bit more. When it comes to, and by the way, if I'm looking off there, those are my notes that I prepared for today. When it comes to choosing a focus for the intensives, I really want to encourage you to think there doesn't have to be like a specific focus, right? There's no good one, there's no bad one. It's really just about like, how do we make the most of the time that we have? So I would love to hear if you all have ideas of what topics you've considered. Go ahead and put that in the chat, and I can give you any feedback on how I think that could look in like a treatment plan. But some examples would be a single incident trauma. So if someone got into a really bad car accident, someone experienced a death in a family, someone experienced domestic violence, sexual assault, something like that, or in a like couples intensive fashion, I've seen a lot of people come in for intensives when they're really concerned about, I feel like we're on the brink of divorce. I feel like, or there has been an infidelity after a breakup. Absolutely, EMDR is helpful for that. So it can be urges for addiction. It can be urges for binging, for purging, any recurring nightmares, prepping for a big life event like an upcoming marriage or a big move across the country, or I'm starting a new job, or even, right, like this doesn't all have to be processing difficult things. It can also be, how do I increase my creative performance, my athletic performance? There's lots of different ideas of what you can focus on. And, right, then there comes into play a question of, well, is this like a one-time thing that we're doing or a repeated thing that we're doing? So like EMDR for breakups, like Olga put it in the chat, right? That can definitely be, maybe you're already working with a client and a breakup happens and you propose, maybe we do an intensive around this. Let's just like process that. So that could probably be a 1-day intensive. That could be a 90-minute, that can be 2 hours. Great example of something that you can do that's very brief. When you start to look into things that are maybe a little bit more complex, like someone who has never felt safe in a relationship because of childhood trauma, anyone who has any kind of complex trauma, usually we're looking at more of like multi-day, multi-hour kind of intensives, just because there's a lot more there than a one-time event. So I always tell people when I'm doing consultation calls for intensives, I say I like everyone to at least start with a 3-hour, because then you really get a feel for what this is, what this feels like, and we can cover probably multiple topics. There are usually multiple topics I've covered with people when it's come to past history of trauma, anxiety, panic attacks, things like that. And then usually a lot of people are good after 3 hours. So that's why I always like to start. And I just did a consultation for an intensive last week where someone had said, here's all my examples of the things I would want to work through, all the things that I'm going through, here's my history. And I was very explicit with them around, I want to start with 3 hours to see how you adjust to it, to see how you like it. And I'm thinking you are probably going to be most helped by at least 3 of these 3 hours. Because 2, right, like again, it was a complex trauma case. There's a lot that needs processing on a lot of different layers. And sometimes the more you process, the more that's uncovered, and then the more that needs processing. So to be thinking about what you all are interested in when it comes to these intensives. Are you interested in kind of like 1 day, 90-minute kind of things, or are you interested in more like intensive packages? I would love to hear that and answer any questions you have about that. For a good faith estimate for intensives, that's a really good question, because yes, I do everything private pay as well. I have my version of a good faith estimate, so it's always good to just have like a template so that you're not recreating everything from scratch. But what I have is, so I do 90-minute intakes before an intensive. So I have the line for, here's that psychiatric diagnostic evaluation, here's the estimated cost for that. And then because I'm usually deciding on the consultation call with the individual, what are we going to start with? Then I will say, if we decided on a 3-hour intensive, I'll put the price for the 3-hour intensive under psychotherapy. And right now we know that the longest code we have is a 90837 until insurance companies maybe want to put back on those extended codes. So I have the 90791 for the intake, the 90837 for the intensive session. And then I like to do follow-ups a couple weeks after the individual's like definitely done with an intensive. But that again would be probably another 90837, and I'll give kind of a cost range for that if it's a 60-minute follow-up, a 90-minute follow-up. But those are really good questions because, right, it's very different than my fee is $275. If you saw me for 52 sessions in the year, your total estimated cost would be this. It's a little less predictable with an intensive because I've had some people who are like, I probably need to do this over and over and over again. And again, after 3 hours, they're like, that was great. I'd maybe like to do one more 3-hour just to like wrap some stuff up, but I feel good. So my good faith estimate just doesn't have that component of like this times this, but kind of has a disclaimer around your cost will ultimately depend on how many intensives you schedule. And if they do like a 3-hour and then they book another 3-hour a month later, I just give them a new good faith estimate so that they have all those expectations clearly laid out. So frequency and duration of how you would decide, what are we focusing on? Again, think about how big is the topic, how complicated does the topic seem to be as you're doing any kind of clinical assessments, how complex is the clinical presentation, because that might also dictate whether it's more appropriate for like a 1-day 90-minute thing or whether it should be a little bit longer than that. But you can also talk about or think about, is this a repeated thing you're doing? Are you doing it weekly for 90 minutes? Are you doing a once a month 3-hour? I see my therapist for 90 minutes every 2 weeks. So there's lots of different ways that you can do this. Again, my practice right now, I do kind of one-off adjunct intensives. And then some people do this, like this is all they do, and they work only intensively with clients. Yes, absolutely. Even basic training in EMDR, that is perfectly enough to start running intensives. That's what I have. I'm trained in a few other things, but I know there are some, I've heard from some other people who are even certified in EMDR that other EMDR training platforms will say, like, take this class to learn how to do intensives. You don't really need that. There's definitely ways that you can apply everything that you know in basic training for an intensive, because really that's kind of what EMDR is made for. It's made for like 90 plus minute sessions, not 45, 50, or 60-minute ones. So yeah, you want to be thinking about, do the modalities that you practice, how is that going to fit into how you run an intensive? Because it's going to be really helpful and also really exhausting to do like EMDR or brain spotting or, again, somatic experiencing, anything like that. It can be really hard for clients to go too long because, as we know, those kind of somatic brain-based forms of therapy are so deep that I find people tend to hit a wall around like 2.5 hours anyway, which is why I say, let's go for 3, because then we can process what it was like. Then we can check in on what's the next course of action. So you can think through for you, again, what works for your schedule. How do you want to make intensives a part of your practice? Is that something where you want to see people 90 minutes every week? You want to see people 90 minutes every 2 weeks, once a month for 3 to 4 hours? What works for you? Again, there's no right or wrong. It's just about, what excites you about this? Is it more of that side income, alternative stream of income, or is this is how you want to do everything? So some resistance that you might notice come up from clients is the cost factor, because what I always encourage people to do is to not charge just your hourly rate for an intensive, because that is not working smarter, not harder. That is working more. That's all that is, if all you're doing is charging your hourly rate. So I, for example, will do 20% over my hourly rate if it's Monday through Thursday, and I do 50% if it's Friday through Sunday. And I have never had anyone complain about the cost. I have only had people say, okay, well, I guess I can make a Thursday work because maybe I don't want to pay more than 50%. But people are more than happy to pay for the premium service that you're charging if you know how to market it as that premium service, of why it's actually more kind of cost efficient, time efficient, cost effective for them to do intensives. If you can sell it well, people are going to have no questions about it and they're going to be excited about it. So they may have questions about, how does this work with insurance? Long answer short, it's complicated. There are some pieces that are eligible for reimbursement. A lot of people who do intensives, at least more than like a 90-minute intensive, are private pay just because insurance doesn't support it. But again, so many people would be more willing to just pay for something effective that's quick out of pocket than continue to do what they've been doing when it's not really working. I have done intensives with both my current clients and new clients. So there are some people I've worked with on my current caseload where we've transitioned to, instead of meeting an hour once a week or every other week, we do 3 to 4 hours once a month. Or I've had people where every now and then we do a 90-minute session. And then with new clients, so there are tons of people I've worked with just on like a one-off kind of basis of whether that's, we've done 3 hours, we've done, what's the longest I've done with like an individual? Maybe 12 hours, because we did 3 hours. So I've done it with both. There's just different ways of like pitching it, because obviously your clients who know how you typically do traditional therapy, they know how it's done. So they might have other questions about, well, how is this different? How's it going to look different? How's it going to, again, finances might come up as a question. But again, talking with them about why you are recommending it, really. Because a lot of us get excited about this, not just from what it can offer us as therapists in terms of more confidence, more income, more flexibility, and things like that, but also because how many times have you been frustrated with like, oh, they waited till the last 10 minutes to bring up the really important thing, and if we just had like 30 more minutes, we can do some really good processing with that. Like, if you've noticed that, your client has noticed that too. And so it's actually one of the easiest sells to just ask your current clients, like, well, what would you think about trying something different? So there's a couple of lives. I think the one that I did last week was actually about how do you market intensives to your current client caseload. And I talked a little bit about the difference of how you do it with someone that you've never met before, if you're doing adjunct therapy or just working with someone who's currently not in therapy. So you can go back and watch that one, and that should have some helpful answers for you too. So otherwise, I want to see if there are more questions. I know we've got about 8-9 minutes left before I'll wrap this up for today. But again, just really want to share some experiences I've had of how this has been so effective for clients. So one of my best success stories is that I had a client who was seeing their individual therapist for 2 to 3 times a week over the past year, was working with a psychiatrist, and just nothing was working. Still had all these symptoms, was having panic attacks, hallucinations, delusions. After their first 3 hours of an intensive with me, said they felt a sense of calm that they have never felt before. After the next 3 hours, they felt a sense of safety in their body they've never felt before. When I followed up with them a week later, no more hallucinations or delusions. And it's been 2 months, still the same. They are still doing great. They've never done better. So like when so much can change in such a little period of time, why wouldn't you want to do this, right? I know that we can get in our therapist head about, well, if this is something that I'm charging premium prices for, then I'm not accessible to people, then I'm not having a socially just practice. But like, that is not, number one, true. The best way to help people sometimes is a way to work that doesn't seem traditional. And it's insurance's fault if it doesn't cover things like this, if it doesn't support things like this, but you are giving the best care to your clients by noticing when that traditional model of therapy is not working for them anymore and giving that recommendation of, I think we should do this or add on this or whatever it is. But if you are noticing you're feeling stuck, if you're noticing they're feeling frustrated, if just a little bit more time, 60 to 90 minutes or 45 to 90 minutes, that could change so much. So I am really excited about anyone who can start incorporating this into your practice. And all of these skills around how do you really launch those intensives, how do you market them, how do you put a page up on your website about it, how do you price them, how do you talk with past clients, how do you network about them, how do you outreach to different people, how do I go through my money mindset and all these blocks that I'm having and insecurities I'm having. All of this are topics that I cover in my coaching program, and I've got 5 therapists in there who are just really making great progress on the work that they're doing and feeling really excited about adding therapy intensives to their practice. And so if that is something that you would be interested in, I do free consultations to talk about if that's a good fit for you. Because I don't want you to join if it's not a good fit for you, and I can still do a little bit of helping and pointing you in the right direction. But also I would love to help you because these are all the things that I've learned from multiple coaching programs of the marketing, the copywriting, the intensives, the money mindset, and I just condensed it all to one program so that you don't have to wait years and tens of thousands of dollars before you feel really confident in what you're doing. So again, feel free to message me if you have any questions about that, but we've got about 5 minutes left and I'll leave space for if there are any questions about anything before we end today. And again, just as a reminder of some things that we recapped in terms of how do you pick that topic for your intensive, really just ask the client, right? Is there something that you'd really want to focus in on? Depending on what the topic is, I might recommend we do a 90-minute. I might recommend we do a 3-hour. We might have to do more of like an intensive weekend package or something like that. So really it's just a matter of asking your clients and seeing what's coming up for them. And then, right, like it's a treatment plan. Treatment plans change. You can always choose something different. But definitely single incident things, very easy to put into a treatment plan for an intensive. Any places where your clients are feeling really stuck or just seeing what comes up, right? Like there's no reason that there has to be a specific focus. I tell people that all the time of where we start doesn't matter too much because your brain's probably going to course correct and maybe we started with this and we ended with that and it seems totally different, but actually that's where you needed to be, so that's okay. So if there's no more questions, again, for those who are watching the replay, feel free to leave any comments on the recording of this, and I will answer those when I see them come in. But otherwise, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. And I hope you have a good rest of your day, good rest of your week. And I will talk with you all soon. Bye-bye.